Hello everybody, this is Reza Durrani, Microsoft Business Applications MVP. Today I will be doing a step-by-step walkthrough of creating a web UI flow to fetch data from a web page and post that data to an Excel file. So I got this request based on my previous videos, and that's why I'm going ahead to create this scenario from scratch. So first thing, I needed a web page for this, so I got this LA fitness schedule that's available on the web that changes weekly, and maybe I need the web UI flow to go ahead and read this information from the table that you see right here and fetch the data and post the data to an Excel file utilizing flow. So let's see how we can achieve this scenario. So to start with, I'm going to go to Power Automate and I'm going to go to My Flows and UI Flows. I'm going to click on New and I'm going to select the Web UI Flow option. I'm going to click on Next. I'm going to call this LA Fitness Schedule and my base URL is going to be the URL that I just pasted right here in the browser. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to launch my recorder, and what this is going to do is it's going to go ahead and launch my recorder. Now I'm just going to try and squeeze this into this window frame right here. Okay, right here, and here's my recorder. So the first thing I want Selenium IDE to do, of course I can start recording and this will open the web browser for me and I can grab things from here and all that good stuff, but what I want to do is I want to grab all the pieces of information on this page, right? I need all the rows, and maybe it's a dynamic table, maybe the number of rows can change. I want to make this dynamic in this from getting the data from this table. So what I'm going to do is the first step is so as you can see, I just opened it. I had clicked on recording, so it just recorded a few steps. I don't need this. I'm just going to select them and click on the delete key. Now what I want to do is the first thing I want is I want to fire a command called open, and of course my target is the same URL. So I want whenever this web UI flow to run, first thing it has to do is use the open command, and here's my target. Now if I play this will just go ahead and open my target in the browser, because that's exactly what I asked the web UI flow to do. Note, I'm not going to use the recording feature. Everything I'm going to build from scratch manually, even the opening of this window. Now the next thing that I want to execute is first thing, many a times I've noticed with web UI flows is when I open a web browser or when I open a page, sometimes it takes a little while for the artifacts on the page to load, the DOM to load. So there is a command that I recommend, and this one is called wait for element visible. So it waits for a particular element in this DOM for this page to be visible. Now by default you see the value is 30,000, that's milliseconds, so it's going to wait, I believe, up to 30 seconds to check to see if this element comes visible on the page. If not, it's going to time out an error. So well, it's going to wait, that's great, but wait for what? So I'm going to click this option here which says select target and page. Now before I do this, so let me not do that. Let me go back to my schedule and let me click F12. Now what this is going to do is going to open the IE developer toolbar function F12. So it's going to open the toolbar for me, and I'm going to pick this table, right? I want this table. Let me try and increase the width as well. So I want to pick this table right here using the IE developer. In fact, I'm in Chrome right now, but using the developer tools. I'm going to go ahead and let's say I want to pick this table. The table is right here. Now this table has a unique ID in this DOM called TBL schedule. Please note that every web page is different, every DOM is different, every table structure is different. So you will have to find what's unique so that you can identify that element being present in the table. or on that web page. So in this scenario, it's a table that has the ID, TBL, schedule. So what I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to say wait for an element where I'm going to use the CSS notation. So CSS is equal to the table hash, because what's the ID of my table? It's TBL schedule. Very, very easy. Okay. Table hash TBL schedule. That's exactly what you do in CSS to fetch that element. Now, in order to test and validate this, all I need to do again is just click on play, and this is going to go ahead and test the first two steps for me. And as you can see, both of them have turned green. Both of them have succeeded in my scenario, which is perfect. So it was able to wait for that element to load. So I've made sure that the DOM has successfully loaded the element that I am looking out for on my web page. Now, the next thing what I want to do is I want to know how many rows are available in this table, right? Now, how am I going to do that? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a command called store text. And if you ever want to know what a command does, or if you can go through the list of all these Selenium IDE commands, always go to reference. It will tell you exactly what this command does. So this one, you just pick an element on the DOM and it will give you the text attribute for that. So if I pick this, and let's say just randomly I pick this element right here, so it's gone ahead and created the CSS notation to grab that particular element from the DOM. Now if you open this, it will also go ahead and give you options for using XPath as well. So let's say I want to use the relative option here. So it says table, the ID of the table is TBL schedule, tbody, tr, th. Okay, now before we get into this, let's analyze the DOM. So if I look at this table once again, so here's my table, ID, table, schedule. If you look at the XPath that it is generating here, it says table ID so and so, tbody, tr, th. That means under the table body, which is exactly the body of the table, and just to prove it, we just expand this again. We go to tbody, is the body of the table. In this, I have my first row, my second row. So these are all my rows, right? These are all my rows. Now, I need a count of all the rows in this table, right? Because this table could be dynamic. Maybe my web page changes. So how do I get the count of the number of rows? Very simple. I need tbody, tr, and I just need the count for the number of trs in tbody. So if I go back here, if you look at this XPath table, it's using the XPath expression here, ID, tbl, schedule, tbody, tr. Now it's pointing to th because that's the element that I picked, but I only want tr, so I'm going to pick tr, and I'm going to change the store command to something called as store XPath count. So it'll give me the count of the number of TRs in tbody. And let's say I want to store this. I'm going to store this in a variable called count rows. Once again, I'm going to click on play. It's going to go ahead and execute this. And the first step is to see if it's all succeeded, which it has. But how do I know the number of, how do I know what value is in count rows? So you can add something called as echo. And here, you can point to your variable which just got created called count rows, and whenever you need to call a variable, use the dollar symbol and within the curly braces put the name of the variable. It is case sensitive, I believe, so it has to match the name of the variable that I created. Once again, I'm going to click on play and it's going to go ahead and replay this, and right down here at the bottom, as you can see, it says echo 14. That means it has found 14 rows in this table, and this table exactly has 14 rows. So perfect. Now I know that there are 14 rows in this table. Dynamic, right? If this increases, decreases, as long as the DOM stays the same, Selenium IDE will be able to use these expressions that I defined here and able to fetch the values for me. Now all I have to do is basically loop through all the rows of this table one by one and start fetching all the column values one by one. And then I want to send all this data back to flow. I'm building a UI flow, but I want to send this data back as a variable to my flow, which in turn will call this UI flow. Now, when I'm sending back this data, I can send it back in the form of text, or I can also send it back in the form of something called as JSON, right? I can also store JSONs, but this is not an API call that I'm executing here, so I don't have any JSON attributes. I have only HTML. Flow has a parse JSON action, but it does not have a parse HTML action. There are different ways in which you can do that. You can use split and tags and all that stuff, but it's a lot of work. So wouldn't it be amazing if we can just pass, again, it's HTML here, but can I build a JSON here? Even if I build a JSON string in my UI flow and send it back to my flow, I can then use the JSON action to create JSON and then just parse my JSON. So let's try that out right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to loop through all the rows of this table. Now I have the count of the number of rows right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable. So I'm going to use a command called store, which can be used to create variables. And I'm going to store the value 0 in this, and I'm going to call this counter. So I'm basically creating a counter variable which has the value 0. Once again, if you want to test this out, just go to echo dollar curly braces and put the name of the variable, which is counter. Play this. It's going to go ahead and execute all the commands right here. And if you look at the data at the bottom, it says echo 0. That means for this scenario, it outputted the value 0, which is exactly my case. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a JSON structure that I can send back to my flow from my UI flow. Of course, it's not going to be a JSON, it's going to be a string. I'm going to parse it into a JSON in flow. Now, I am in Visual Studio Code, and the structure of my JSON that I want to create is going to look something like this. So it's going to be an array, and each row is going to be an object. It's going to have a column called timing. I'm going to put the timing attribute here, and it's then going to have the days, Sunday, right, Monday, and so on and so forth. You get the idea here. Now, I need to build my JSON in this fashion. Now, if I head back to Selenium IDE, this is what I need. I need the array opening, the array closing, and I need each row to be an object, which is under curly braces. I have my different columns here that I've defined: timing, Sunday, Monday. This is my timing column. This is my Sunday column, Monday column, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to Selenium IDE, and this time I need to create a variable to store that JSON value. So once again, I'm going to use store, and I am going to open my array. So I'm basically going to start creating my array here, and I'm going to call this JSON value. Okay, that's my array that I'm going to create, or my JSON that I'm going to create. I've just put the opening braces of my JSON in here, nothing special. The next thing what I'm going to do is I need to loop through all the items in my rows of this table. So there is a while loop, there is a do while loop, there are for loops. There's a lot of things that you can do in Selenium IDE. In this scenario, I'm just going to use a while loop. So the command is called while, and in the target, you need to define your condition. So my condition is while count rows is greater than the counter. Now, what is count rows? Count rows is the number of rows that get returned. In my scenario is 18. My counter initially is 0. Okay, so while the number of rows is greater than the counter, keep looping through every item, like keep executing the while loop. Okay, obviously I'm going to increment the counter inside the while loop, and that's going to be my next statement. So under the while loop, click below the while loop. Right here, I want to increment the counter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another command called execute script. And in the target, what I'm going to define is something called as return, okay, dollar. What's my variable that I want to increment is counter plus 1. So basically what I'm saying right here is return this value, which is the value of the counter, and add 1 to this. Now the counter variable, it considers it as string, so you can typecast it to a number. So I'm just going to typecast this to a number. So I'm going to get the counter value, which is 0. I'm going to add 1 to it. I'm going to return that value. And where I'm going to store this value of this command, I want to store it in the counter again. Simple, right? That's my while loop. Now, if I want to check to see if this works, I'm going to again execute an echo command, and I'm going to print the value of the counter. And whenever you open whenever you do while loops, for loops, you need to also execute another command at the end, command called end. So you close that loop, right? Now at the bottom, I'm going to clear my logs and I'm going to execute this entire UI flow again. So while this is executing, notice it's running through the loop and you see the counter is increasing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it just kept going, right? My counter executed and finally my counter completed successfully, right? So my condition is very simple, right? While the number of the count rows is greater than the counter, you keep executing this. I kept creating a counter. Simple. Now the next thing what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create variables for storing each value of my cells. Now I know I have a lot of cells here. I'm just going to focus on the timing cell, the first column, the second column, and the third column. I'm just going to fetch the first 3 column information. Now how am I going to do this? First thing again, analyze, understand the DOM. So if I click on this, note that under the table, the T-body tag, we have all the rows. For each row, the first row is a TH, right? It's a table header. And within this is an H5 tag which has the value. The second column is the second TD tag, which is empty in this case. The third column is the third TD tag. Once again, this has a value and so forth, right? So this has a TH tag and all these subsequent ones have a TD tag associated with it. Okay. Now if I head back to my UI flow, now within the while loop itself, if I right click here and if I say insert new command, I can insert steps right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use once again something called as store text. Okay. Store text basically gives me the text of that node. Now if I want to connect to that node, I already know what my XPath looks like, right? I'm going to reuse this XPath code right here. I'm going to paste this right here. Now I've gone up to TR, right? Now TR is always going to be the first TR unless and until I specify which TR in this chain I need. Now my TR is defined in my counter. Okay. Now normally arrays begin from position 0, but here when you're using XPath, you have to begin from position 1. My counter initially was 0. I incremented it first, so it'll start from 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So instead of putting TR1 or TR2 or TR3, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use dollar curly braces counter. So it's going to put the value of the counter here and get me the TR value, right? This will give me the TR, that is the current row for which the while loop is executing. Now within this, if I want the first column, we've already seen how the DOM looks like. If I want the first column, it is TH, second column is TD, and so on and so forth. Now because there's only one TH, I can just do /TH, and this is going to give me the TH. Store this into something called as column timing. Okay, call timing. I'm going to copy this. I am going to paste this again because I'm going to reuse this again and again. I'm going to create another thing called call Sunday. Okay, that's going to give me the second column value, and my column is right here. It's my TD. Now this is the first TD. This is the second TD. So Monday is the second TD, and so on and so forth. So what I need to do for call Sunday is replace this TH with TD and 1. Right, for Sunday it's going to be the first TD. Once again, copy, paste. This time call Monday, and this is going to be TD number 2. Right, and now if I want to test to see if the value is right, so I know I've printed the counter here. Let's also print dollar call Sunday value right here, and let's just run this to see if everything goes through well. And if it does, it should go ahead. So see, first, second is empty, third one is cycle zone TBD, body works plus. That's exactly what it's fetching here from the Sunday column. So it's working absolutely fine. And the same thing it's going to do for Monday, and so on and so forth. So perfect. I've got the values from the columns dynamically looping through the loop. Now the next thing what I want to do is I've created a variable called JSON val, which is obviously going to be a string right now, but I want to create a JSON that looks something like this. Now I already have the opening array tag. Now for each row, I need to add this into my row. So that means for each for loop, what I need to do is, once again, I'm going to insert a command, and this one is going to be called execute script. Okay, now what's the script that I want to execute right here? My script is going to be, once again, return, because I want to return a value from the code that I'm defining. First thing is $JSON val. This is the value stored in this variable, right? Plus, now because this is a new row, in quotes, I am going to open the curly brace, and this curly brace is my JSON structure right here. Now the next step, what I want to do is I want to add the piece that defines timing, right? I need to have the double quotes. Now, one thing that I've observed is I was not able to, whatever I tried before this, I was not able to put double quotes in here and execute it successfully. Apparently, it doesn't escape double quotes. I'm sure there's some escape condition, but unfortunately, I was not able to figure that piece out. If anybody does, please do let me know. So instead of putting the double quotes, because anyways my data is being returned as a string, I'm going to use any delimiter of my choice. I'm just picking three hyphens here. Nothing special about this. So instead of passing double quotes, I'm passing 3 hyphens, and then in flow what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all the hyphens with double quotes, purely because I was not able to do this in Selenium IDE. Because if I put a double quote here, and if I execute this, so when this runs, what I have observed is it goes ahead and it does not play well with the double quotes, as you can see. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go back here, and right here I have my timing column. Let's just show you how it fails. So I'm going to have my timing column here, timing column in double quotes, of course, and then I have colon, and so that's in string. I'm going to do plus. So basically I have just built this part right now, and now once again under double quotes I need, so again I'm going to open double quotes. In these double quotes I need the value of my timing column, so call timing is what I am going to store here, and once again I'm going to do plus and my double quotes. Now if I store this in the same variable called JSON val, and if I execute this, you will note that when this runs, I did observe that it fails. That's because it has an issue analyzing or parsing that double quote token. So once again, let's clear the log. Let's go back here, and this time instead of the double quotes, I'm just going to put a token that I will replace later on. So I'm just going to put 3 dashes right here. So I'm just going to put 3 dashes right here. I've put the call timing column, once again 3 dashes right here. Okay, so I have, what I'm doing right here is very simple. The previous value of the JSON plus a hard-coded string that I'm defining, which basically looks like, well, it's not going to be the right JSON, but it looks something like this, and within this is going to be the value of whatever I fetch from my DOM. So if I head back here, I have this token defined, I have my brackets opening, I have my timing column defined. After my timing column value is there, I'm going to put a comma, and then I am going to define the second column, which is going to be Sunday. And again, I need double quotes around Sunday, so I'm just going to do something like this. There's going to be a colon defined after that. Once again, I need double quotes. I'm going to put 3 dashes plus dollar. Now it's going to look a little stupid, but it's all going to work. Call Sunday plus, once again, single quotes, double quotes is my 3 quotations. And let's say I just do Sunday for now. I don't want to get into Monday and so forth. And once I'm done with this, I am going to close my tag. Okay, so all I've done so far is I have defined up until this point. Now I need to close it, and then I need to close the array as well. So what I'm going to do right now is, instead of closing it right here in this step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a condition right here. So I'm going to insert another command. I'm going to add an if condition, and my condition is that if the count rows equals the counter. That means this is the last row. If this is the last row, this tells me if this is the last row or not. Now within this, I want to add a command, and my command is going to be execute script, and once again return what? $JSON val. So whatever I have in my JSON plus single quotes, I'm going to close the row and I'm going to close the array. Why? Because this is the last row in my loop. Okay, next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert another command and I'm going to add else. Okay, so I'm going to put the else condition right here. I can copy this and I can paste this here, move this under else, right? And once again, because it's if and else, you have to add an end here too. So I'm going to add an end right here. So it is very simple. If loop begins, if my condition matches, this is what's going to happen, all these steps. Else, all these steps are going to execute end. Okay, now in this scenario, I don't want to close the array, I just want to close the row. So that's all what I'm executing right here. And finally, when all of this ends, just so that because I'm testing this right now, I want to make sure my value is correct, I'm just going to print the JSON value right here. Okay, and whenever you're executing script and you're returning a value, you need to also store it. I'm going to store it in the same JSON variable. Now I'm going to go ahead and play this, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to execute it for all the rows in my table, as you can see. And if everything goes through fine, once it loops through all the rows, you see it's on row 4, row 5, it's executing through all the rows of this table. And once it completes, it should give me the JSON. So let's wait and see if this thing works fine. It's still going, still going. All right, there you go. That's the final tag that it has put out. Now if I copy this and if I put this right here, right, or let's say I go to the web browser again, I use this site a lot, jslint.com. If I just paste it right here, of course if I validate this JSON, it's going to fail because it's not understanding what these tags are, right? Dash dash dash. Now as you can see, for some reason my dashes didn't come through correctly. So if I go back to Selenium IDE, let's look at why has, so 3 dashes, there must be something that I have put off. 3 dashes, 3 dashes, 3 dashes. It looks fine right here. So let me go ahead and copy this again and let me paste this into a notepad. I am going to show you how the notepad also looks like. So here it is, and I'm going to go to replace. I'm going to replace the 3 dashes, and this is what I will do in Flow as well, with double quotes, replace all. Now I get my JSON. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go to JSONlint.com, and I'm going to validate my JSON to make sure it's working fine. As you can see, it's showing all the data, but I forgot to put the comma. So if I head back to my UI flow, the mistake that I have made is when I ended the tag, I forgot to put the comma right here for every row, because the next row needs to begin after a comma. And now if I execute this again, this will go ahead and put that comma in there. And this is going through now once again and executing through all the rows in that table, and it should get me the data. Now this video is going to be a long one because there's a lot of work groundwork that needs to be done first to get the exact JSON string value from a web page. So this is executing all the rows again, and once this completes, I should have my string that I'm going to copy again. I'm going to paste it into the notepad. I am going to use the replace action. Replace, I'm going to copy this, go to JSONlint.com, and once again just paste it here and validate the JSON. Now you see my JSON looks correct, and it has all the values from the timing, the first column, and all the values from my second column, which is the value of the schedule for Sunday. Okay, now let's say I want to put all of this in an Excel file. Now I have built my flow. This is what my flow returns. I'm going to click on save. Please don't forget to click on save. And once I do that, you see here is the flow that just got, my UI flow that got saved. If I go to edit again, it will come back here and I can replay this. Now, when you call a UI flow, Again, this is still in preview. What I observed is if you have these echo commands, it errors out. So I'm just going to go and remove all the echo tags because these were only meant for testing purpose. So I've just removed all the tags related to echo. And once I'm completed with this, I'm going to click on save. Okay, so here's my flow, my UI flow. Now, in order for me to call this flow, I'm going to go to my flows and I'm going to create an instant flow for now. You can create a scheduled flow that runs every week, goes, picks up the schedule and posts it to an Excel file. So it's just an example. So I'm going to manually trigger this flow. And right here, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to search for UI flows and I'm going to run a UI flow for the web. In this, I am going to pick my UI flow that I just created. And let's say I want to execute this in Chrome. And in my next step, I am going to add a compose action. And in this compose action, I am going to, now notice all the variables, all the stuff that I created in my UI flow are all available here. I just want that JSON val. So I'm going to pick JSON val. Now this JSON val is going to give me the results, but remember I wanted to replace those three, my delimiter, which was those three hyphens with double quotes. So if you go to three ellipses and if you go to peak code, you can actually copy the code. So I'm just going to copy this code right here. I'm going to hit done. Once again, notice I went to peak code. When I'm copying, I don't copy the @ symbol. This is the expression length, syntax, and flow. I am going to remove this, and this time I'm going to go to the expression syntax. Now in expression, there is a function called replace. I'm going to call this function. Replace expects the first parameter to be the main string. So that's my body tag that I copied in peak code, comma, right? Now what is the old string that you want to replace? So in single quotes, I'm going to put 3 hyphens because that's the delimiter that I defined in my web UI flow. And the next one is going to be the double quotes. So what it's going to do is going to replace the 3 quotes with double quotes, and it's going to give me the result. Now that result I know is going to be an actual JSON. So what I can also do is I can use the JSON function and give it a string value, which is right here. So this will transform it or give me a JSON object. I'm going to click on OK. If all of this works fine, this should give me a JSON object, and I'm going to rename this to JSON value. Okay, that's my action. Now if I head back to my if I go back to JSON lint, this is the JSON response that I got, right? I kind of calculated. Now I can run this flow and get it, but I already have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called as parse JSON. Okay, now before I execute parse JSON, let me just go ahead and save this flow, and let's just run this flow and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to save this flow, test, save and test, continue, run. Now this flow is executing, and while this flow is executing, what it is going to do is in the background, it's actually doing it. I have a second monitor, so it's doing it on the second monitor. It is opening up the web page, and of course there's a lot of calculations happening. All the logic that we wrote is currently being executed, and once all that logic completes, it's going to close the web browser, and then it's going to go ahead and complete this action called run a UI flow for web, and it's going to return me the JSON value. Now while this is happening, because I want to post this data to an Excel file, I'm in my OneDrive. I'm going to go ahead and quickly create an Excel file in OneDrive while the UI flow is running in the background. And in Excel, I'm going to quickly create a column called timing, a column called Sunday. Please note they do not have to match the exact values that I was reading in my UI flow. These are just column headers. I'm just going to select both of these, go to insert table, and I'm going to say yes, my table has headers because these are the headers. You have to define tables in Excel so that Power Automate and Power Apps can leverage it. I'm going to click on OK. So it's created a table, and let's rename this to LA Fitness Schedule. Okay, so here's my flow. I'm sorry, here's my Excel file, in my OneDrive. I'm going to close this, and here's my file, LA Fitness Schedule, that I created in my OneDrive, which is empty. Now, if I head back to Power Automate, you see it executed, and let's look at the JSON value. Boom. See this? Let's copy this. Let's go back to the JSON validator and post it right here. See, I got these values from my UI flow. Perfect. Next, what I want to do is I want to post this to that Excel file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this output, Control A, Control C, and use an action called parse JSON. I'm going to use the parse JSON action. My content is going to be the JSON value, right? And the schema, I'm going to say generate from sample, and I'm going to paste that JSON that I copied, hit done. And the next step is I'm going to go to new action. I'm going to use the Excel Online for Business, and I am going to use the add a row into a table action because I want to add rows to that Excel file. So the first step is, where's the location of my Excel file? It's my OneDrive. The document library is going to be, of course, OneDrive. And which folder in my OneDrive? I have created a folder called UI Flows. I'm going to pick this folder, and within this folder is my Excel file right here. Now that it has connected to it, it will look for any tables. We created a table, and in this table there are two columns, timing and Sunday. Now, because I parsed my JSON, and my JSON object, this output action and flow will now contain the values for Sunday and timing, because these are the values that are being returned as part of my JSON that I just parsed. If I had additional columns, they would all show up there. So for timing, I'm going to pick timing, and notice when I do that, it puts a for loop because it could have multiple rows in my JSON. It's an array. And the next thing I'm going to pick is from the parse JSON action is Sunday. Done. I'm going to test, rerun this entire flow again, and continue, run. I'm manually running this flow. Now what's going to happen is, once again, the UI flow, it's executing in another browser window of mine. I'll just show you. It's right here. See, the Selenium IDE called the flow, the web UI flow. You utilize Selenium IDE to call my web page, and now the first step in our web UI flow was to open the web page, and then all those calculation logic that we wrote, which was calculating the number of rows in this table and then looping through each row, and for each row we were fetching the value from the first column and the second column. So it's going to go ahead and do all of that. Now note the schedule here. It's from 5:45 a.m. I'm going to try and see if I can zoom in. 5:40. Okay, it closed because Selenium IDE completed its task and it's now moving ahead. But just to show you what the values look like, I'm going to post the web page on the web browser again. So as you can see, 5:45 a.m. all the way through 8 p.m. There are a few classes that are happening on Sunday. It's only happening from 8:15 a.m. to 11 a.m. right? There's no class on 9. If I head back to Power Automate, it should go ahead, and now it's looping through 14 rows, as you can see, because we have 14 rows and 2 column values that we fetched. We could have fetched all the columns as well. The code would have been longer, that's it. And once all of this completes, which it has, if I now go back to my UI flow, and if I look at this Excel file, and if I open this Excel file, let's wait and watch. Come on. And if I expand these columns, there you go, right here. See this? Brilliant. So it fetched all the data from my web page using UI flow and based on all the formulas that we defined. So it's very important to know the Selenium IDE commands. It's very important to count the number of rows. It's very important to loop through each row. It's very important to fetch the column values, create it in a string format like I did, and then just pass it back to the flow, convert it to a JSON, make it like a JSON structure as you saw, and then use the parse JSON action, just loop through it and put it in the Excel file. I hope this was useful. Thank you so much for watching.